Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. It's lovely to see local fundraising has finally started to take off again. We've had 2 fundraising events in the last month. Firstly, we had one of our members, John. He completed a sponsored swim of over 50 lengths in West Wight swimming pool, and so far John has raised over £260. Thank you very much, John. Also, last Friday at New Close Cricket Ground, Pete and Tracy organised a quiz in aid of Site for Wight and so far have raised over £185, with the online donations still coming in thick and fast. It really does finally seem like people are able to get out and start to return to their normal lives. On this note, it is so nice that Karen is getting out and about literally every day now, visiting members, sorting out individual problems for them. So if you do need that extra bit of help coming out of lockdown, please don't hesitate to give the office a call on 522205. This week, we have also welcomed Abby onto the team. We are so pleased Abby has been able to join us with her wealth of experience of working with people of mental and physical needs. Abby, welcome to the team. Finally, this week, we've actually got the October newsletter out. Slightly delayed, unfortunately, due to the post office not being able to collect them from the office, but they are now out. This month is a bumper edition with 36 pages packed with lots of information, helps and tips. You can order your large print diaries, join our raffle, join us ice skating on the 20th of November, come to our Armistice Day honouring next Thursday at the 11th with Morris singing for us, and with our Christmas lunch and Christmas fair in November, it really is quite a very busy month for us. Please, everybody, stay safe. Thank you, Lisa.
This is Chris, reading an article from On the Wight. Demolition of Spitfire building, huge loss to the city, say campaigners. There are many Spitfire enthusiasts on the Isle of Wight who will empathise with the campaigners who tried to save this historic building. A building once used to test wartime Spitfires is set to be demolished. The so-called flight shed, on land off Wide Lane near Southampton Airport, is to be knocked down to make way for new industrial units. The decision taken by Southampton councillors comes as planners said the building is not listed and the new development would create up to 257 new jobs. However, campaigners described the move as a huge loss to the city. It comes as almost 50,000 people signed the Spitfire Makers Charitable Trust's petition calling for the building to be saved. On Tuesday night, Alan Matlock, chair of the trust, asked the Planning and Rights of Way panel at Southampton City Council not to allow demolition of the flight shed and to raise awareness of its significance. Speaking on behalf of Aviation Heritage UK, Julian Temple added, "We must all work together to find an acceptable solution." Official documents published last week revealed that the shed contributed to the testing and assembly of the Spitfire in Southampton. But it was also confirmed that Historic England indicated that the building has been too altered to satisfy the listing criteria. James Hicks, speaking on behalf of Carbide Properties Limited, which tabled the plans, said, "The advice is that it is not suitable for listing. The building has been extensively modified." He also stressed that the redevelopment of the site, which would see 4 new industrial units and 112 parking spaces, would create hundreds of jobs. It comes as other existing buildings near the flight shed are also set to be demolished as part of the scheme. A planning officer told members that the Spitfire is iconic and it's clear that it is important to the people of Southampton and nationally. But he added that planners have to consider the application as it stands and stressed that the building is not listed. Panel member Councillor John Savage voted against the proposals and said, "There's pressure on us to get this right. It's difficult. I think we need to go the extra mile. There's an enormous amount of emotional value. Once it's gone, it's gone. The rest of the panel voted in favour of the plans and approved conditions asking to secure building recording and the installation of panels illustrating the history of the site. After the meeting, Mr. Matlock said to be disappointed with the decision taken. He added, "It means that the most significant connection and physical building that Southampton has with the Spitfire will be lost. It is a huge, huge loss to the city."
This is Michael reading from Ireland Echo. Calls for regulatory governance as cross-Solent ferry travel raised in the House of Lords. Lord Anthony Berkeley has blasted the current situation with cross-Solent ferry travel in an address to the House of Lords and has called for the government to introduce regulatory oversight on Isle of Wight ferry companies, ensuring they behave and provide the lifeline services they have committed to. It was on Monday evening that Lord Berkeley raised a motion to regret in relation to the changes to the Competition Act 1998 during the coronavirus pandemic, stating that it provided an opportunity to discuss the role of competition in ferry services, particularly here on the Isle of Wight, as well as on the Isles of Scilly. Addressing the House of Lords, Lord Berkeley questioned whether competition laws, incentives, or even allows operators to compete and what the difference is between when the temporary coronavirus regulations was in force and now, when it is not. Lord Berkeley explained the situation islanders face. There are two monopolies to the Isle of Wight, providing what the government seem to agree are lifeline services. There is not much monitoring going on as to whether these are effective. You have to ask what customers can do when these services are seen to be failing. You can ask the carrier, but it will say that it is not interested. You can ask the Department for Transport. That will say that these are commercial services that they cannot influence. Customers may then ask what the remedies are if companies are seen to fail. After all, rail services are tightly controlled, as are many bus services, and there is generally competition for air travel in most places. Where is the community bit? What about affordability, service quality and frequency for the NHS and other emergency services? There seems to be no pressure on operators to reduce costs or improve services. Where does the pressure come from? It could come from competition or from a government agency. After all, the government control rail fares. In Scotland, something called a road equivalent tariff is generally applied on fares and charges. To Islay, there is 29 pence per mile. For the Isle of Wight, on the Southampton to Cowes route, it is 96 pence per mile, which is 3 times higher. The train fares in the UK are very similar, between 10 pence and 30 pence per mile. Unlike rail, the ferry fares are not regulated. There is no transparency about the ferry company's costs, what might be a reasonable profit, or the use of the COVID-related grant. What can people do? It is not just Lord Berkeley who has views over the lack of transparency when it comes to the Isle of Wight ferries. Councillor Phil Jordan, the Cabinet Member for Transport on the Isle of Wight Council, has been quoted as saying, "We have great concerns over the transparency of the operational factors of ferry companies that, in turn, lead to commercial decisions that take little into account of lifetime services the ferry operators provide or the human cost involved, such as commercial decisions." Lord Berkeley noted that Bob Seeley MP has voiced support for the public service order and that the Isle of Wight Council has committed in its corporate plan to achieving a public service order on the Solent ferry operators, but not much is known about this. He called on the Minister for Transport to inform where that has got to. Without mincing his words, Lord Berkeley concluded by saying, "I do not think that the competition on the Isle of Wight works properly. This failure of competition and governance is clearly having an adverse effect on the economy. Scotland recognises this, but in England I think the government hope it is all going to go away. I would like to hear the Minister's response to the proposal that there needs to be some kind of regulatory oversight to make sure that the companies behave and provide the lifeline services to which they have committed themselves. We have the Office of Rail and Road for the railways and part of the road network. Perhaps the remit of that could be expanded to cover ferry services. Maybe it is time for the CMA, Competition and Markets Authority, to be given a remit to examine these issues afresh and, most importantly, keep them under regular surveillance. I believe that some urgent action is required to make competition work for the benefit of consumers." Baroness Randerson agreed with almost everything said by Lord Berkeley, but noted that the Isle of Wight is much closer to the UK mainland than any other island. She noted that the Isle of Wight ferry operators are proud of the special prices they provide for many local people and for people travelling to health appointments. However, Baroness Randerson had a warning for cross-Solent operator, saying they probably need to do a great deal more if they are to continue in their situation, because there is talk of a new operator to be set up, run by a local consortium.
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. Afternoon tea celebrations murder. 30 years of entertainment marked. A special celebratory tea party was held at Northwood House last month to mark over 30 years of entertainment by Court Red-Handed Productions. Started in 1919 by Simon DeBell and friends, Court Red-Handed Productions created unique murder mystery weekends and evenings where guests enjoyed trying to work out whodunit. Using a wide range of local island acting talent, the entertainments allowed hotel and restaurant customers to play the role of private detective and quiz the suspects after discovering a murder. Though laced with humour, these white murder investigations are designed to stretch the little brain cells, and evidence can include a range of evidence from the scene of the crime, a pathologist's report, as well as any amount of red herrings. Over the past 30 years, this theatre group have performed well over 300 entertainments, and Simon has created over 60 murder mystery plots for guests to enjoy. 54 guests attended the special celebration on the 17th of October, including many local actors. Court Red-Handed continued to provide murder mystery entertainments for a wide range of commercial and community venues.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Drug offences up 30% in a year, but crime down 8% on the Isle of Wight overall. Crime on the Isle of Wight has fallen by 8% during the COVID pandemic, but drugs offences have risen by a staggering 30%, the latest figures from the Isle of Wight's Community Safety Partnership, CSP, reveal. The impact of COVID is evident when looking at local crime rates between April 2020 and March 2021. With 3 lockdowns over the 12-month period, as well as the restrictive tier system, 679 fewer crimes were reported than in the previous year, although some sectors saw a rise. The CSP has said that lockdowns resulted in fewer opportunities for crimes to take place as people remained in their homes and businesses were closed. Although crime fell by 7.8% on the island overall, nationally there's been a 13.1% reduction. The island's crime rate is lower than the national average at 64.5 per thousand on the Isle of Wight and 77.6 per thousand in the rest of England. Of all recorded crimes on the island, 5.3% are in the form of drug offences, with 486 reported incidents in 2020-21, a 30% increase on the previous year. On the flip side, the areas that saw the greatest reductions were those relating to theft, with shoplifting down 58%, theft from a person down 45%, and non-residential burglary down 41%. The CSP has said social distancing and the closure of eateries, pubs and clubs led to a reduction in violence with and without injury, also showing a decrease in violence between strangers and acquaintances. Violence with injury crime was down 18%, with a reduction of 284 reported offences and 124 fewer reported violence with injury offences on the previous year. Roads were also safer this year, as road traffic injury collision data showed a significant reduction with 214 records. Of those recorded road traffic incidents, up to February 2021, 70.6% were slight, 28% were serious and 1.4% were fatal. Sexual offences were down 9%, with 428 reported offences last year, a reduction of 42 incidents in 2019-20. The increase in antisocial behaviour, ASB, was shown to be at a peak in August, when there was an easing of lockdown restrictions. A total of 2,438 ASB incidents were recorded in 2020-21, an increase of 61 on the previous years. There was an increase in stalking and harassment offences, partially due to a change in the way the incidents are recorded, which saw a 25% rise and 280 more incidents than in 2019-20. Of the violence against people crimes, 35.8% were flagged as domestic violence, with over 1,900 recorded incidents, 100 more than last year.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. We don't know why it collapsed, says Southern Water, as work continues at Apley. Southern Water has admitted that it doesn't fully understand why a major sewer pipe collapsed in Ryde earlier this year, but says works are taking place to prevent a repeat situation in the area. It was back in January that a metre-wide sewer pipe catastrophically failed at Apley, some 10 metres underground. This has led to over 10 months of disruption beside the seaside, with emergency pumping equipment drafted in to divert all of Ryde's wastewater away from the collapsed section of pipe. A photograph released by Southern Water has, for the first time, revealed the true extent of the situation faced by engineers, showing how the top of the pipe caved in and filled the crucial pipe with debris. The failed sewer has now been fully repaired, with both a steel sheath and a glass fibre insert put in place around the existing pipe. However, it has been identified that the 40-year-old pipe, which runs from the repaired section into the low-level pumping station, is potentially at risk of collapse too. Southern Water has taken the decision to complete a further 200 metres of work to help prevent a similar situation from happening in the future. This includes a distance of 130 metres between shafts 1 and 2, which will result in some further disruption in the North Walk area from mid-November. It has been confirmed the road will be temporarily widened and almost 20 car parking spaces will be suspended whilst contractors install more pumping equipment to enable the proactive, preventative efforts to encase the concrete pipe in steel. North Walk will remain open to traffic. It is currently envisioned that the gravity-led flow will be restored by Christmas, but it could be as late as the end of February until the area is returned to normal. Reinstatement works, which includes backfilling the newly built Shaft 2, are expected to begin in the new year. When questioned by Island Echo as to why the collapse went undetected until the sinkhole appeared, no real answer could be given. It has been suggested that flow monitors at the nearby pumping station may not have detected a change if sewage was still able to pass through the pipe, but it's hard to believe the rate went unchanged. There have been assurances from Southern Water that investments are being made in digital technologies to help identify blockages in pipes in the future. Although no inspection of the sewer pipe has been carried out to date beyond Shaft 1 at the junction of North Walk and Canoe Lake Road.
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Ambitious plans for new Ryde Marina if negotiations successful. Ryde Harbour could be rebranded the Ryde Marina when it changes hands next year as part of ambitious plans. Ryde Town Council, RTC, and current owner, the Isle of Wight Council, IWC, are currently in negotiations. If talks are successful, RTC will take over control and add the harbour to its property and investment portfolio, which also includes St Thomas's Church, Vectis Hall, and eventually Ryde Town Hall. The Town Council has now published its 5-year business plan, outlining where it would take the harbour's future and how it will continue to grow beachfront hire facilities. A new marina webcam is proposed, along with a new website, giving weather information, tide heights, and a visitor booking system. New pontoons will be installed, increasing the number of berths to 130. Electricity will be supplied to increase visitor income and replace the current noisy generators. Short-term parking for berth holders is being proposed with a card entry system for access. At a cost of around £125,000, the Town Council is proposing to move the harbour office and install more facilities like showers and toilets to accommodate the summer visitors and berth holders. The Town Council says rebranding the harbour as Ryde Marina will allow it to have a new start, drawing a line under the old ownership. It says it will mean it can stamp its own identity, values and customer service from the start. Discussions continue, but Ryde Town Council could become the new owner on April the 1st.
This is Patrina reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Mince Pie Marathon is back. Mince pie fever is hitting the Isle of Wight again as Bright Bulb Design Mince Pie Marathon returns for another year of short crust madness, raising valuable funds for the White Brainy Bunch charity. The initiative, which is in its 3rd year, has raised £10,000 for the charity over the previous years, which goes towards families affected by brain tumours on the island. Bright Bulb Design CEO Matt Jeffrew said, "I'm so excited to see the Mince Pie Marathon return. Every year we have stories to tell of the event. Last year we delivered mince pies at the top of scaffolding for builders, while residents and businesses alike donated pies to carers and the hospital to say thank you for all the great work that has been done over the course of the year. Many businesses donated their pies to the food bank, and Salvation Army, so that the joy could be spread even further. We had great doorstep conversations with island residents who found the whole concept a fun break from the COVID doom and gloom that engulfed us. This year, IT service and support specialist PC consultants have taken on the challenge of supporting the Mince Pie Marathon as the headline sponsor, having finished within the top 10 over the previous couple of years. Sean Colson, chairman of the PC Consultants, said, "We have taken part in the Mince Pie Marathon since its inception, but this year we really wanted to take it to the next level and sponsor the event, helping our friends at Bright Bulb smash a new mince pie selling record, and in turn raising thousands of pounds for the Wight Brainy Bunch. To take part, all you need to do is purchase some mince pies. Simply log on to www.mincepiemarathon.co.uk and choose how many boxes of mince pies you want delivered, and the team will take care of the rest. Each mince pie costs £1, and every penny is donated to the Wight Brainy Bunch charity."
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Amazon World says goodbye to Ernst the giant anteater. Amazon World Zoo Park has said a sad goodbye to Ernst the giant anteater, who has died after more than 16 years at the park. Ernst was born at Wilhelmina Zoo in Stuttgart, Germany on the 15th of October 2004 and moved to Amazon World Zoo Park in July the following year. During his 16 years at the zoo, Ernst fathered 2 offspring with his previous partner, Clienne. The popular giant anteater has been under specialist veterinary care for some time and had struggled over the last few months with deteriorating arthritis. Medications had been helping him. However, as his condition worsened, the medications became less effective, and this affected his mobility and ability to properly move around his enclosure. His condition deteriorated rapidly over the last 3 weeks, and sadly, despite the best efforts of his dedicated keepers and vets, there was no more that could be done to help him. Ernst could no longer live the quality of life he deserved, and therefore the very difficult decision was made on Thursday morning to say goodbye. A spokesperson for Amazon World has said, "Ernst captured the hearts of everyone that had the pleasure of working with him. He could be stroppy at times, but that only made his keepers love him even more. Ernst loved nothing more than cooling off with a cold shower in the hot days of summer, and we will never forget his love for avocado and bio yogurt and the fact that he used his nose to smear his food all over the walls of his house. The keepers never minded, though, as long as he was enjoying himself." Zoo owners Derek and Sandra were with Ernst on Thursday morning as he drifted away.
This is Chris reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Plans to repair and restore Ryde's Apley Tower. Restoration of a Ryde landmark is drawing closer, with a planning application imminent. The biggest obstacle facing the project to save Apley Tower is the repair costs. If they spiral further, it may hinder the scheme. Ryde Town Council and Natural Enterprise want to bring it back into community use. An update on the tower, its plans and the future steps needed was given to Ryde Town Council on Monday by Graham Biss, Chief Executive of Natural Enterprise. A planning application will be submitted shortly, Mr. Biss said, to gain permission for the tower's restoration, as well as building 4 beach huts nearby as a form of income generation. A feasibility study performed in 2019 estimated repairs would be in the excess of £220,000, although to get the tower in a good enough state to open it to the public would cost £330,000. It is hoped a successful bid to the National Lottery will provide £225,000 for the cost of repairs. Additionally, money has been provided from the Isle of Wight Council and Wight Town Council, each putting forward £40,000, with the remaining bill to complete the project picked up by Natural Enterprise. Concerns were raised, however, that the cost of repairs may have risen, and Mr. Biss told councillors he was slightly fearful it would be much more expensive to fix, which may take the costs above what could be reasonably be funded. A recosting exercise is currently underway to determine what the new costs could be. As part of the operational model, Natural Enterprise proposes for the tower that maintenance should be carried out each year so the tower does not fall back into a bad condition. It would get the funds for maintenance from the rent it receives from the tenant proposed to run the day-to-day aspects of the tower, Moncton Arts, and to ensure the tower remains open for the next 10 years. The funding bid is yet to be submitted, but Mr. Biss said they have a strong case. He added that a letter of support from Ryde Town Council would be helpful. Mayor of Ryde, Councillor Michael Lilly, said the people of Ryde have a particular affinity with the tower as a popular spot for proposals, so if it was necessary, a crowdfunding campaign could be another option.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Revealed details of why the George Hotel failed food hygiene inspection. Details of why a major improvement necessary food hygiene rating has been slapped on the George Hotel in Yarmouth have been revealed. The popular Yarmouth hotspot was inspected by the Isle of Wight Council's Environmental Health Team back in September, with 8 problems found needing immediate attention. Inspectors found issues with stock rotation and control, with 2 systems in place instead of 1, and a pack of sausages past its use-by date. Also, daily diary sheets had not been completed to monitor temperatures in the past 4 days prior to inspection, and there was a lack of allergen information. The cleanliness of the kitchen was also raised as an issue, with hand contact surfaces, areas of the walk-in chiller, around the waste bin and the underneath shelves in the kitchen storage unit dirty, with old food debris found in areas. Other issues identified include raw chicken being stored next to an open container of lettuce, food being stored in containers on the floor of the walk-in chiller, hand washing basin unable to be used due to it being full of utensils, no filter in the extraction unit, damage evident to the floor, sealed to the fridges, split and requiring replacement. Overall, the hotel scored 50 out of a possible 60, which led to 1 out of 5 rating. The George has not yet issued a statement on the council's findings.
This is Patrina reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. To us it was yesterday, says the mother of missing Damien, 25 years on. The mother of missing islander Damien Nettles has opened up about the gaping wound in her family, 25 years on from the disappearance of her son. Damien was just 16 when he vanished from Cowes on November the 2nd, 1996. Although she admits today it's a sombre day, Valerie Nettles has told Isle of Wight Radio she hasn't given up hope that he will be found. Every November the 2nd is a reminder of what happened. We just approach it in the same way. We We tried to make the best of it, she said. I still remember 25 years ago, at this time this was happening, and at this time this was happening. I don't like to call it an anniversary, because that has the sound of happiness about it. It's missing a day. We just go about the day as usual. There's not much we can do. We just miss him every day. To us it was yesterday. It's 25 years, but we've spent the last 25 years immersed in this life of missingness, and it's become a way of life now. We learn to live with it and around it. We never get over it. It's always a gaping wound in her family and in the wide community. It's just a strange life that we've been living for the last 25 years. I sometimes wonder what life would have been like had the family not had this happen. I think life would have been quite different if Damien was still with us. I often wonder. I have 6 grandchildren from the 3 children I do have here. I often wonder what Damien's children would have been like, and how he would have been happily married. Valerie, who moved to Texas with her family 20 years ago, says she still receives messages of support from her friends on the island, as well as the wider community. Damien's case is being reviewed by group Locate International, which is made up of ex-police officers. The University of South Wales Criminology Department is also involved. They, Locate, did identify some questions they had, and they forwarded that to the police, who are maybe considering working side by side, Valerie said. There are things that Locate can do and take on some of the aspects of the case and iron some things out for the police if they agree to it, and it takes that weight of extra work away from the police. And so it's just something that's in the process of being approved, so we'll see how that works out. Valerie's daughters, Sarah and Melissa, have also created a group named International Siblings of the Missing. The group's pages can be found on Facebook and Twitter at Siblings Missing. If you have any information that you think can assist in the inquiry, then please email info@locate.international. Alternatively, anyone with any information about Damien can call police on 101 or anonymous Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Plans for major dinosaur theme park in Sandown as dead as a dodo. The Isle of Wight Council is no longer looking to pursue the development of a dinosaur-themed visitor attraction in Sandown, which will come as a major blow for the seaside town. As previously reported by Island Echo, the former Conservative leader of the council, Dave Stewart, said back in March that the regeneration of Dinosaur Isle on Culver Parade was a Disneyland opportunity, with more than £33 million expected to be invested. It was in July of this year that Island Echo reported about a local consortium's plans to make Sandown the centre of paleontology research, as well as a major tourist attraction. However, the idea is now dead in the water as far as Sandown is concerned, as the new administration at County Hall has announced it will no longer pursue the development at Dinosaur Isle and the adjoining Browns Golf Course land. Cabinet members will meet next Thursday to decide on a way forward for the area, as it is recommended they seek to secure an effective and sustainable long-term solution to the future of the Dinosaur Museum, either at the current or any alternative site. They will also decide on the recommendation to develop an alternative regeneration proposition of the council-owned land at Culver Parade, which reflects its environment and supports the island biosphere designation. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, the Cabinet Member for Environment and Heritage, has said the Council is committed to ensuring the island remains an internationally renowned location for paleontology. He has also acknowledged the strong feeling in the community to maintain Browns Golf Course, as highlighted by a recent 3,000-strong petition raising concerns about the future use of the land in the area. He says, the basis for a new investment proposition at Culver Parade is to be focused on public access, maintaining the existing environment and heritage, and complement the UNESCO Biosphere designation of the island. We are conscious of the need to move things forward, both for the regeneration of Sandown and the potential of our world-renowned dinosaur collection. Unfortunately, in the last few years, we seem to have been trying to put a square peg in a round hole. This paper allows us to take things forward without unhelpful self-imposed restraints and concentrating on what will best serve our heritage and environment. In the meantime, the Council will continue to support the tenancy of the golf course for its management and maintenance. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Business Development, has said the new administration wants to secure alternative investments that complement the area's natural environment and unique heritage. She said the process to bring forward the regeneration of the Culver Parade area has presented the Council with some complex challenges. However, as a major landowner and provider of a key tourism and educational facility, we recognise the opportunity to take a leadership role in the future of this part of the bay, which has suffered from underinvestment over many years. It is imperative to us as a new administration to develop an opportunity for regeneration and investment that will enhance what the local community values as important in this area of Sandown. It's noted that Dinosaur Isle will require a significant level of ongoing investment, not just to maintain the fabric of the building, but to refurbish and upgrade the visitor experience, adding weight to whether Dinosaur Isle will remain at Sandown in the years to come.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. Suspended sentence for Totland woman who failed to provide and wasted NHS resources. Despite being found slumped behind the wheel with slurred speech and stinking of alcohol, a Totland woman has claimed in court that she hadn't been drinking. Lorraine Mildred Daniels, 61, care of the Broadway in Totland, pleaded guilty to failing to provide samples when she appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday. The court heard that at 21:20 on the 17th of September this year, a concerned member of the public alerted police to a suspected drink driver on Cotner Road, Portsmouth. Police soon located the Suzuki Swift that had been seen swerving over the road and found Daniel slumped in the driver's seat with the keys in the ignition. It soon became evident to officers that Daniels had slurred speech and smelt strongly of alcohol. Despite this, Lorraine Daniels appeared in court this week claiming she hadn't drunk that night, but that an open bottle of whiskey had spilt in the car, causing the strong smell. Daniel's solicitor said that her client was trying to pick the bottle up, and this explained the swerving. But magistrates simply didn't believe that version of events. Liz Miller, prosecuting, explained to magistrates that Daniels, a care worker, had been obstructive to police when in custody before claiming she had taken an overdose of diazepam. The 61-year-old was taken to the Queen Alexandra Hospital at Cosham, where she refused to give a blood sample. It was then discovered that she hadn't taken any pills. Defending, Amy Hosell said that her client was on the mainland due to a breakup of her relationship and that she was in the wrong kind of mind. It was also said that Lorraine didn't know how to deal with the situation, refusing to provide, believing she would get a solicitor. In their sentencing, magistrates said that factors taken into consideration included that Daniels had failed to provide twice, wasted NHS resources, lied about overdosing, and had driven between 100 and 200 miles that night. Daniels was handed an 8-week prison sentence, suspended for 12 months, as well as being disqualified from driving for 32 months. She was also ordered to complete 15 rehabilitation days and pay £85 costs with a £128 surcharge.
This is Michael reading from Ireland Echo. Ryde Town Council won't stop buying property despite councillors' concerns. After a property buying spree earlier this year, a bid by a town councillor to stop Ryde Town Council snapping up even more property hasn't progressed. At a council meeting on Monday night, a motion put forward by Councillor Les Kirkby called for the town council to stop buying properties until existing properties are finished. The town council added to its property portfolio at the start of the year by buying St Thomas's Church and Vectis Hall, as well as also agreeing to buy Ryde Town Hall once surveys and checks have been taken place. Councillor Kirkby agreed the town council was not living within its means and warned if the council carried on borrowing money the way it has been, it could go bust. He said he is worried taxpayers could suffer and may face an even greater rise in council tax precepts. Last year, Ryde residents were hit with an 8.9% increase, adding £12.20 to a Band D homeowner's bill, making an annual payment of £149.56p. The increase added £240,000 to the town council's reserves. Mayor for Ryde, Councillor Michael Lilly, said the authority has, as a part of its corporate plan, looked at income generation with astute borrowing at low interest. Councillor Lilly said budget talks are starting and the town council would work hard to keep the precept down, with potentially no rise at all. Councillor Kirkby's request did not even get considered by the 14 councillors at the meeting. No one seconded the motion, which meant it could not be debated.
Good morning, this is Paul reading the County Press for the 5th of November.
Hello, this is Francis reading.
Okay, before we start the second part of the County Press, here's this week's Society News. The swimming group at Medina is every Monday at Medina Leisure Centre, 1:30pm till 2:30pm. The group have exclusive use of the pool and are looking for new members, so if you are interested in joining, please call the office for more details. The cost is £5 for swimming. Transport is available if requested. Please call the office for more details. The lunch club planned for Tuesday the 9th has been cancelled due to staff commitments, but please remember we have our Christmas dinner on the 25th at the Isle of Wight College. 3 courses for £10 per person. That's the 25th of November. If you'd like to join us, please call the office to book a space. It is limited to 50 spaces. Coffee and chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House from 10am until 11:30am, and it's only £1 to include the cake and coffee. Come along and spend time with members and staff, discussing various topics, etc. Our book group is held at Millbrook House once a month. Members can either choose to receive a USB stick or CD from the RNIB, the new chosen title, and then discuss when they meet together. The group is looking for new members to join, so if you love reading, please call the office and they can send out your preferred method. It is free to join. Our next meeting is on Wednesday starting at 2pm in Millbrook House. On Thursday, November the 11th, Millbrook House will be celebrating Armistice Day. Morris, our wonderful entertainer, will be coming along to sing some songs and entertain us all. This is open to all members, volunteers and friends. If you wish to book your space, please call the office. The meeting starts at 10:30 a.m. and we will of course observe the 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. Upcoming dates for your diary. The charity have plenty of events and activities planned in the next couple of months and thought we should share them with you so you can place them in your diaries. We are very fortunate to have Vision Aid coming to Millbrook House on Tuesday the 16th of November demonstrating their equipment. If you would like to come along, we have an appointment system running, so please call the office to book your time slot. West Wight Monthly Swimming is on Wednesday 17th. If you'd like to book a space, please call the office by next Friday the 12th to book a space. Transport can be arranged. We have been very fortunate to be given 20 spaces at the ice skating rink on November the 20th in Newport. If you fancy being the next Torval and Dean, please call the office and book. It's first come, first served basis. There is a penguin aids to help you, so please do not worry. It is for half an hour at 2:30 p.m. We have our Christmas lunch booked at the Wight College on November the 25th. It is 3 course for only £10 and this is open to volunteers and members and once again is limited to 50 places. So call the office to book your space.
We have our Christmas coffee morning at Millbrook House on Saturday the 27th of November between 10:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. We will have a variety of stalls and refreshments on offer, so it is a chance for you to empty out your drawers of any items you think would be suitable to sell and kindly donate to us for this event. As always, we are very happy to accept any donations of items suitable to either sell or use as raffle prizes. This is a reminder our annual story writing closing date is next Friday, the 12th of November, with the competition awards evening on Monday the 6th of December at the Riverside Centre, Newport. It is still not too late to enter the competition, so if you are at a loose end and would like to write a story on this year's theme, Vision, please call the office or download an entry form for the rules to be in with a chance of winning some fantastic prizes. Winning stories once again will be read by our celebrity readers. It could be your chance of stardom. Hopefully by now you have received the latest newsletter with all our latest news. If you would like any calendars, diaries, Christmas cards or raffle tickets, please do not hesitate to call us on 522205.
We're now going to move on to letters, and this is a letter from Steve Goodman at Newport. How Isle of Wight could make future sustainable. The ubiquitous COP26 coverage makes it impossible to deny our out-of-control climate catastrophe cat is definitely out of the bag. That decades of ignoring increasingly urgent warnings have cost us dearly, and that the scale of investment, cooperation and levelling required in response is enormous, but essential for any sort of worthwhile future for humanity. The good news is that collectively we know what we should be doing, and that we should still enjoy a reasonable quality of life if we start making the changes required. The bad news is it is already too late for many people and other species, and the inertia in both our political and climate systems means more death, destruction and displacement is on the way, whatever happens at Glasgow. Our national, local and other nations' politicians can and must do better in response to our existential emergency, and so must we. On the island we could at least be more self-sufficient in energy and food. We are well placed to take advantage of sun, sea and wind power, and any keen drillers could go for geothermal energy rather than the fossil fuel folly recently requesting, despite the global advice to the contrary. Here are some things we have. Insulating and building properly to reduce costs and energy demand. Support community agricultural farms and incredible edible public space food growing. Public and private open spaces for nature. Communal composting, an abattoir, repair cafes. Reduce car ownership and use with vehicles and cycle pools, and increase use of more frequent and affordable public transport. Teach skills to meet more of our needs locally. Be more active, productive and mutually supportive. Create essential long-term jobs. The need for immediate, drastic local, national and global action and major policy and investment changes to end our suicidal behaviour is long overdue. There is still a huge investment and action gap to plug if we really are serious about getting on with saving lives, livelihoods, economies and the nature we all need to support us and other species. The cost of failure is far greater than the cost of investing and changing the way we live.
A letter from Pat Holland in Newport. Why did Alliance not consult parents on these school holiday changes? I, no doubt with hundreds of other islanders, have just returned from a fabulous family holiday in the sunshine. Going in the first week of the extended October half-term break meant that not only was the availability of destinations greater, the price was a heck of a lot lower too. Had I gone a week later, when the rest of the country is on half-term, the price would have risen by around 60%, a lot of money in anyone's book. Unfortunately, the same choice and deals won't be available to me and other families this time next year because of the Isle of Wight Council's perverse decision to reduce the autumn half-term to 1 week in line with the rest of the country. This was a decision taken by the Isle of Wight Council's Alliance administration with little consultation with schools and precisely none with parents. Frankly, it makes a mockery of the Alliance's claim of wanting to involve local people in the decisions that affect them. I, and my kids for that matter, would very much welcome clarification from the Cabinet member responsible for education, Councillor Debbie Andre, as to why this decision was taken at all and why it was done so without any consultation with parents. Does she not feel that parents should have had a say in something so important? Decisions such as this, made seemingly on a whim and at the stroke of a pen in some secluded corner of County Hall, have big implications for family life. We deserve a plausible explanation and also, I would suggest, a reconsideration.
This is a letter from George Lee at Cowes. Common sense in short supply. T. Sellers, County Press, the 29th of October, thinks the government doesn't deserve any criticism for the way it handled the COVID pandemic. I totally disagree. Not being privy to the official scientific advice, I relied on common sense. That instinct told me that when a new variant is discovered, you do not wait several weeks before banning anyone from that country arriving in the UK. Common sense also told me not to discharge patients from hospital straight into care homes without first checking if they had COVID. The original government belief was that face masks were worse than useless. Again, common sense said a face mask would not only prevent being infected, but would prevent being infectious. I have to say that common sense is not so common.
This is from Ursula Hollis in Cowes. Why are trolls allowed to prosper? Little wonder that many competent, well-meaning people are discouraged from entering public life because of the barrage of abuse they will receive from people who presently post their hateful comments online with impunity. In the wake of the tragic murder of Sir David Amess MP, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer called for the Prime Minister to clean up the online cesspit. In doing so, the government will need to look at the subject of trolling and consider whether the Online Harms Bill 2021 will achieve this and will include the prohibition of trolling wherever practicable. A recent research paper defines it as involving the posting of inflammatory material on social media platforms, online forums, etc., with intent to silence a discussion or to cause offence. It is often aimed at specific targets, be they individuals or groups including ethnic or religious minorities, people with disabilities, or of a particular sexual orientation or political affiliation. As well as emphasising the harmful effects trolling and cyberbullying has on its targets, the paper suggests trolls are narcissistic and sadistic, have low self-confidence, lack of empathy, and post their anonymous comments for amusement or to cause maximum upset and mental distress to their victims. Why we presently allow the press and online media platforms to indulge these trolls is a mystery to me. The threat of action under the Malicious Publications Act 1988 seems to be ignored because trolls hide behind pseudonyms. It is not difficult to see how harmful this is, even at a local level. Is it not possible for the media to prevent trolling by simply ensuring that comments can only be posted by authors who state their true names and of whom the publisher holds genuine details of their identity? This would enable the victims to exercise their right to pursue damages for defamation of character, if so advised. This used to be a generally sufficient deterrent to prevent the publication of blatantly malicious letters in the press, but since the advent of online trolling, the victims are left powerless and the trolls all too powerful.
This is a letter from Candice Harper in Ventnor. We can't rely on others to solve this climate crisis. When Boris Johnson says at the beginning of COP26 summit they cannot afford to let future generations down, you know that it's precisely what they're going to do. Russia and China not being at the table will be used to point the finger and do nothing other than talk. As usual, we cannot rely on our politicians and leaders of the commerce and industry. Indeed, why should we rely on others to solve the climate crisis? The truth is the solution is in each and every one of our hands. We need to consume less and reject items that pollute, are unsustainable and have a ridiculously global footprint. In short, we need to, as consumers do our bit, along with calling out those individuals who are not and continue to needlessly pollute.
A letter from Susan Powell, East Cowes. Alternative view on Fawley chimney loss. I feel I must respond to the letter by Charlie Grange of Cowes, County Press, the 28th of October 21, who is highly delighted at the demise of the Fawley chimney. I know I'm among many who looked fondly upon this piece of industrial architecture, not as a blight on the landscape at all. I've always found it a comforting presence, like a lighthouse, a beacon for the sailors and all who use the Solent. The view from East Cowes will be sadly diminished as far as I'm concerned. And now it's all over, we can all reflect that once our useful life is over, we too will return to dust.
Sewage benefit. This is a letter from Penelope Baker in Lake. After watching the Chancellor's long speech that failed to report on renewable energy project investment, I turn to an issue we've all been hearing about: sewage. Biogas from sewage is often overlooked when talking about renewables, but it, together with sewage sludge as a fertiliser, is something this island must address if it is to protect our marine environment. Anaerobic digestion is one of those technologies we have on the island, although perhaps not the latest version. Isn't it time that the council brought in consultants to update solutions for an island waste plan? Waste contracts may be 25 years long, but sewage is likely to be in the waste contract. Of course, there are issues with sewage, not least toxic cleaners we use at home. A quick internet research shows some alternatives to cleaning that unhygienic bowl: a mixture of baking soda, disinfecting essential oils, specialist cleaning white vinegar. Where to get to source a deterrent? Perhaps a new environment officer could put together a useful leaflet, as opposed to the leaflet I received on my bin for not putting out a kitchen waste bin. I home compost higher up the waste strategy, doesn't require transport or plastic packaging, and takes in many biodegradable forms of waste which would otherwise go into the waste stream with additional CO2 elements.
Letter from Barry Abraham, Wootton. Tourism bid process has left a nasty taste. As a partner in a tourist business, I am somewhat concerned how the de-bid voting process has been run. There are a number of businesses that have not received any voting papers, ourselves included. I have raised issues about who has to pay this extra tax to fund tourism on the island, because the biggest benefactors of tourism on the island, namely the supermarkets, do not appear to be paying anything towards it. Also, with the number of Airbnb, surely they should be contributing something towards tourism on the island. Now it looks as though there has been a 35% turnout of members, of which 55% voted in favour, and we need to question how many businesses did not receive a ballot paper that potentially could have resulted in a different outcome. The council collects the business rates from the tourism businesses on the island and should be well aware of where they are and who they are, especially as they would have been dealing with them on the pandemic payments. This whole process has left a bad taste in the mouth, particularly if the result is left to stand.
There's a letter from Vix Lothian, the Green Party in Newport. Silly is more level than Wight after £48 million handout. While our MP Bob Seeley was patting himself on the back last week for winning a £5.8 million levelling up bid for East Cowes, the Isle of Scilly have been awarded £48 million to improve their ferries and increase connectivity between our islands and the mainland. Congratulations to the Silonians for achieving this level of investment in critical connectivity for our island communities. Meanwhile, our own cross-island ferries are currently delivering some of the worst levels of service I can ever remember. Only last week, the Southampton Cowes route was severely disrupted after breakdowns and even a fire on board. This week, vital commuter services were cancelled due to staff shortage. Not forgetting the last catamaran now leaves Portsmouth at 8:20 p.m. Our ferry services are expensive, infrequent and increasingly unreliable. Whereas other island communities are getting significant levels of financial support from the government, why isn't the Isle of Wight getting this level of funding? Whatever happened to that much promoted island deal? Does anyone still believe that pledge was ever going to be delivered? Or is it yet another empty promise from this MP?
Letter from Peter White in Ryde. Renewable, the wrong term? I cannot claim to be an expert in such matters, but to follow logic, I wonder if the effectiveness of renewable energy may dwindle as an outcome of its own success. I refer to the increasing introduction of wind tidal turbines, voltaic photocells, heat pumps and the like, which, together with the reduction of hydrocarbon burning and other measures, should promote an improvement in our atmosphere and help stabilise global warming. It will be great when the world climate's decline slows down and to potentially reverse, however. As the atmosphere recovers, the strength of more efficient ultraviolet light to fall on photocells will weaken. As global temperatures drop, the heat energy retained in air and ground, relied upon by heat pumps, will reduce. As weather systems reduce in dynamics, the blades of wind turbines and for tidal capture will slow in rotation. Renewable energy provides a welcome stopgap as its generation thrives on the consequences of Earth's chaos. As our world improves and technology explores new alternatives, more efficient and sustainable methods for energy generation will dominate. As we have grown to know for coal, oil and gas, there is no bottomless pit for renewables. Nothing in nature is free without consequence.
We now move on to Wight memories. Nearly 30 men died in 1908 ship collision. On the afternoon of Saturday, April 25th, 1908, a blinding freak snowstorm was in progress on the island. As it raged, two ships were making their way through the Solent. The first, HMS Gladiator, was transporting 250 soldiers to Portsmouth Dockyard and had just entered the Solent at Yarmouth. The second, an American passenger liner, the St. Paul, had just left Southampton for Cherbourg and was approaching Yarmouth from the opposite direction. In poor visibility due to driving snow, the two ships collided, the St. Paul smashing amidships into the Gladiator, ripping a large hole in her side. She drifted, taking in water, and eventually capsized just to the east of Fort Victoria, which was then a fully manned army base. Soldiers were soon on hand, but despite their efforts, nearly 30 men were drowned in the freezing waters that afternoon. Bob Crisp of Freshwater, who was stationed at Fort Victoria, gave a first-hand account of the accident to the county press in 1958, then aged 81. He said it was a terrible day that Saturday, not fit for a dog to be out. There was a strong wind and it was snowing like Billy O. We were all sitting around the fires in the barracks and we heard a loud bang. We rushed down to the beach and saw the outline of a warship loom out of the snow and come slowly towards the fort pier. It came within 15 yards and we could see the sailor standing to attention in the howling wind. It made me proud as a Navy to see how these sailors stood steadfast and made no effort to save themselves. Some of them could have got to the pier as she passed, but not a man moved. They were marvellous. After a while it was clear the ship was going to turn over and we heard the order to abandon ship. As it finally toppled over, men scrambled up her side onto the hull, but about 50 dived into the freezing water and made for the shore, not one of them wearing a lifebelt. One boat from the ship landed safely and the soldiers tried to relaunch her, but each time they did, she swung round and was carried back onto the beach. If we could have relaunched it, we could have saved all the men in the water, but it was impossible. We were continually being knocked over by the huge waves. The soldiers got out of their boats, but the sailor struggled in the waves, grabbed the sides of the boat and it sank, and was washed up on the beach with its crew and some 15 of the sailors. It was launched again and the same thing happened, but it turned out to be an effective rescue method. The boat made 8 trips and all the men between the warship and the fort were picked up, but nothing could be done to help the others who were further out and were being swept away. We were up to our waist in water most of the time. I have never been so cold in my life. The rescued sailors lying in the snow were given blankets and mugs of tea and then taken to the hospital at Golden Hill Fort. Many crew members were still in the sea, clinging to the Gladiator's hull in driving wind and snow. They had to stay there in the freezing cold until destroyers came from Portsmouth to pick them up. In all, 29 men died in the accident. Only 3 bodies were ever recovered. The cause of the accident was simple. When the 2 ships met, the St. Paul first tried to pass on the port side, the correct route of the sea. But the captain decided there wasn't enough room and changed course to pass on the starboard side. The inevitable collision followed, tearing a hole 40 feet by 20 feet in the Gladiator's side. A naval court of inquiry found the St. Paul responsible for the collision, but when the Admiralty sued the owners of the liner, a High Court held Gladiator responsible. At only 8 years old, the Gladiator was a young ship, so it was decided to try and salvage her. Concrete bases were built on the shore near Fort Victoria to take huge wooden bollards, and enormous buoyancy tanks were strapped to the Gladiator's hull. Steam winches were anchored on shore to pull on 2-inch thick steel cables run from the bollards to the wreck, and a salvage operation began. After an hour, the ship's mast slowly began to rise from the seas, and by 8 p.m. that night, the Gladiator was almost upright, and it was eventually towed back to Portsmouth after a salvage operation which had cost more than £60,000. Back in the dockyard, the ship was declared beyond economic repair and was sold as scrap for £15,000. After more than 100 years, the evidence of events that afternoon can still be seen at Fort Victoria. As a recent colour photo shows, the concrete bases and bollards are still standing today, a case for a memorial plaque perhaps.
Nostalgia. Ireland played big part in the space race. Last Thursday saw the 50th anniversary of Britain's only satellite rocket launch, and the island played a unique part in this moment in history. Here, Doug Millard, Deputy Keeper of Technologies and Engineering at the Science Museum, London, explains more about the Isle of Wight's role in this moment of UK space history. He wrote, "On October the 28th, 1971, a British Black Arrow rocket launched the Prospero satellite into an orbit of the Earth. The satellite is still up there and should remain so for many more decades. Part of the rocket fell back to Earth and in 2018 was brought back to Britain. But if you want to see an intact rocket up close, then the Prospero rocket's successor, which was never launched, is on display in the Science Museum's Exploring Space Gallery. The Science Museum acquired the rocket back in 1972, and for many years it was displayed on the gallery floor. In 2000, it was suspended from the gallery ceiling, with the stages separated to demonstrate how a rocket works better. The museum curators worked with the team which made the rocket all those years ago. The rocket was initially developed by Saunders Roe and later Westland as the result of a merger. Both companies were based on the island where the rockets were test-fired on Highdown in West Wight and at the Needles New Battery." Doug continued. The team leader described one of his concerns at the time over the testing. At the base of the rocket's first stage, and in the middle of the engine nozzles, is a ball. This ball was gripped by a hydraulic clamp, preventing the rocket from taking off while the engine reached maximum thrust. If that clamp had failed, the rocket would have taken off from the island by mistake. The actual rocket launching took place in Woomera, Australia. The rocket stage there, that was later returned to Britain, was retrieved from the Australian desert where it had lain for almost half a century. Going along the length of the unlaunched rocket in the Science Museum's gallery, it is possible to see some of its mechanisms. In the base of the open fairings, there's a ring surrounded by 6 little rocket thrusters called imps. The rocket's third stage motor, named Waxwing, and the satellite sat on this ring. When the imps fired, the entire third stage with satellite was spun at 3 revolutions per second. This would help stabilise the satellite when it was finally released into orbit. After launch, the ground stations in Australia would have received signals from the rocket and its satellite payload throughout the climb into space. When stations in Alaska started to receive signals 40 minutes after launch, the Black Arrow teams knew their satellite was safely in orbit. Until that moment, the satellite was referred to as X3. Once in orbit, it was renamed Prospero, after the magician in William Shakespeare's The Tempest. Prospero was an experimental satellite testing materials and systems which could be used in the manufacture of communication satellites. Doug said, unfortunately, no more Black Arrows flew, and the next in the series of experimental satellites, Miranda, was launched by a NASA Scout rocket. But Prospero's legacy lives on. The knowledge gained by British industry from the Prospero mission and others which followed helped develop what is today's a multi-billion pound satellite industry in Britain. Doug concluded, "The future now looks rosy for a new rocket industry in Britain. After decades without any major involvement in rockets, Britain is poised to start launching rockets from its own territory, something that has never been done before." Did you work on the Black Arrow project? If so, we would love to hear from you. Email your pictures and memories to Katie at iwcpmail.co.uk.
We now move on to My View. This is an article by Malcolm Mine. Is the Isle of Wight Council making headway on promises? It is now 6 months since Laura P.C. Wilcox put together a collective of independent councillors to take control of the Isle of Wight Council. So it seems a fitting time to give them their first unofficial performance review. Soon after taking control, Laura announced that new administration's priorities were to be as follows. 1. Spend and invest as much council money on the island as is possible. 2. Gain greater control of the planning system and prioritise truly affordable housing for island residents. 3. Place the health and well-being of residents at the centre of all activity and prioritise dealing with health inequalities and the resulting poverty, which has been highlighted during the pandemic. 4. Work with local communities to maintain and ensure appropriate local school provision. 5. Treat COVID recovery as integral to everything, including supporting the regeneration of our town centres, and aim to ensure there is free parking provision in all towns. 6. Find a permanent working solution to Floating Bridge 6, if appropriate by scrapping and replacing it. I pointed out at the time these pledges were made that, with the exception of the promise to sort out the floating bridge, the promises looked to be nothing more than sound bites that didn't really mean anything. So was I being unfair, or have we seen these priorities implemented? Here's my review. 1. The former Tory administration invested in a number of commercial properties on the mainland, so presumably Laura and co were planning to cash in those investments to invest the funds on the island. Has this been done? I've certainly seen no mention that it has, so how much of a priority was it? Firstly, I don't see a problem with council funds being invested in property on the mainland, as long as they are good investments. But as it was a priority pledge by this administration to invest council money on the island, when are they planning to do it? 2. I have also seen no evidence that the council has either A. gained greater control over the planning system, or B. prioritised affordable homes for locals. As I stated 6 months ago, I really couldn't see how the planning system could be changed. It was a naive promise, or are they going to prove me wrong? If so, when? 3. Have health inequalities and poverty been tackled as a priority? Yes, again, I see no evidence. What does this pledge actually mean? 4. Has anything changed at all with our education system? Again, I haven't seen evidence of it. It really does look nothing more than a soundbite. 5. Having walked my dog around Newport and Sandown recently, there is no sign whatsoever of any regeneration taking place. And in fact, these particular towns look worse than ever. It's about time the council forced those responsible to smarten up their shop fronts. As for the free parking, I've seen no sign of that either. Councillor Julie Johns Evans is in charge of regeneration, so if this remains a priority, we need to see some action. Every week without fail, the councillor in charge of transport, Phil Jordan, has delivered a statement regarding the floating bridge. He has told us the council are commissioning technical support, and once that's done, mediation will take place with the builders and designers. Following the end of the mediation, which Councillor Jordan has promised will be before the end of the year, we are told by Mr Jordan that a serious decision will be made about the floating bridge. The floating bridge has been out of action since August due to yet more mechanical problems. And in March, another $250,000 is to be spent on a service. Talk about throwing good money after bad. The correct, serious decision will be to scrap the floating bridge straight away. Don't bother with the service and just keep a passenger launch. In summary, I don't really see that much has changed in the past 6 months. However, it is still early days, so for now I'm giving this administration the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes just plodding along isn't a bad thing, but as I have stated more than once, it is the outcome of the floating bridge that this council will be judged on. Let's hope they get that serious decision right.
Rejection of Oil Plan Reflects Climate Strategy by Laura P.C. Wilcox. The last month has been a trying one for the administration. 4 members of my cabinet have had COVID, and we have had to cancel and postpone meetings as a result. Some have been quite unwell. However, we would much prefer to be safe than take risks. It has, however, brought home the fact that we are still in the midst of a pandemic. We must remain conscious of the need to take precautions, and we must remain alert of the risks that COVID still presents. Despite this, we have still been able to take some important steps forward. With our status as a UNESCO biosphere very much in mind, the application to drill for oil in Araton was turned down unanimously by the Cross-Party Planning Committee. I am happy with this decision, as it ties in very much with the way we want to take the island forward, particularly bearing in mind our climate change strategy and action plan. In addition to this, we have been able to advance the project to redevelop the transport interchange at Ryde. We have brought forward a bus service improvement plan. We have taken positive steps to resolve the floating bridge issue, and as a result of applications submitted within a month of us taking up office, we have been able to secure £5.8 million funding to help regenerate East Cowes. After 5 months, we are now setting the new direction for the council. We have published our new corporate plan, which will be discussed in detail at the full council meeting on November the 17th. It sets out a programme including our key aims to care for our environment, achieve economic recovery, and most importantly, deal with our housing crisis. It sometimes seems like we are trying to knit with fog while walking through treacle to improve things, but we are determined, and with the direction we have set, continued public support, and the unity of the Alliance grouping of councillors and others across the Chamber, we will strive to do everything we can to help, support and advance our precious island.
This is some acts that are on that you could see. Ride pianist Thomas Luke, who won the keyboard section of the Young Musician of the Year 2020, will give a piano recital for West Wight Arts Association tomorrow. The event will be held at Memorial Hall Freshwater at 7 p.m. Tickets at £15, £2 for students and children, are available from www.westwights.co.uk or Tottenham Parish Office on 756028. Audience numbers are limited, masks will be worn and windows and doors will be open, so wear something warm.
Fair for Trust. The Wessex Cancer Trust is set to benefit from a Christmas gift fair being held in Cowes later this month. The Isle of Wight Community Club in Park Road will host the fair, which will feature more than 25 stalls on Sunday, November the 21st from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Parking is free and the stalls will feature handmade gifts and sweet treats. The bar is open and the club will be serving Sunday roasts.
Enjoy black comedy performance with the Apollo Theatre. A comedy of manners without the manners is being tackled by the Apollo Theatre. The Apollo players have taken on multi-award winning black comedy God of Carnage by Rasmina Reza, translated by Christopher Hampton. What happens when two sets of parents meet up to deal with the unruly behaviour of their 11-year-old sons? God of Carnage opens tonight, Friday, and runs until November the 13th, not Sunday or Monday, at 7:30 p.m. Book at apollotheatre.org.uk or via phone number 210010.
Here are the 3 best recommended dog-friendly pubs and restaurants on the island, according to dogfriendly.co.uk. Situated on the south coast of the island, in Chale, the White Mouse Inn is a 17th century coaching inn. Located in Arraton, the Fighting Cocks is a family and dog-friendly pub and restaurant. The Propeller Inn is a traditional family-run free house found on the edge of Bembridge Airfield. Former owners Chris and Anne reopened the free house in June 2016 after an extensive refurbishment, but passed over ownership after 5 years to Roxy and Rick earlier this year. Well-behaved dogs on a lead are welcome in the bar area and on the wooden floor in the dining room.
There's some more music and events to enjoy this week. Monday, music Grant Sharkey ticketed, Medina Bookshop Cows, 7 p.m. Jazz Jam hosted by the Jim Thorne Trio, Key Arts Newport, 7:30. Clubs Melodic Choir Practice, weekly contact meledchoir at gmail.com, Gurnard Pines, Cows at 6:45. Tuesday is Steve Love's Island Songs, Moncton Arts Ride, 10:30 a.m. Wednesday is music Platform 1 presents Strings Bar and Venue, Newport at 7 p.m.
This is additional news. Coppins Bridge work starts. A rolling programme of work to upgrade the traffic signals at Coppins Bridge in Newport is to begin next week. The scheme was supposed to have started on October the 25th, but was deferred after complaints over a lack of consultation. Island Roads has now announced work will start on Monday. All the signals at Coppins Bridge will be upgraded to include the latest intelligent technology to make them more reliable and energy efficient, and to improve remote access. 4 pedestrian crossings will be upgraded to incorporate the latest LED low-energy technology. The crossing between the Medina Way Slip Road and Fairley Road will be upgraded from a pelican to a puffin crossing, which includes smart technology that automatically extends crossing times for slower pedestrians and does not halt traffic when nobody is using it. The remaining crossings will also be upgraded to run on a lower voltage to improve energy efficiency. The programme will be undertaken either side of Christmas to ensure the project does not impact on the main festive shopping period, and will involve 7 signal sites undertaken over 5 phases to further reduce disruption. The schemes are the last phase of a programme to upgrade all lights and crossings.
Solent Fort sold to private investor. One of the 3 Solent forts has been sold and is likely to become a luxury leisure facility. Horse Sand Fort, which is undeveloped, has been sold to a private UK purchaser for £715,000. The 3 former sea defences built more than 150 years ago to protect the country from a French invasion had been owned by entrepreneur Mike Clare, who decided to sell them in 2019. The entrepreneur is keen to sell the 2 remaining, and working with Collier's Hotel Agency has now set a deadline for bids on No Man's Fort. Paul Barrisford from Collier's Hotel Agency said, "Following our recent sale of Horse Sand Fort, Mr. Clare is keen to progress on No Man's Fort and has reduced the asking price to $3.6 million and set a deadline for offers to come forward. The 99,000 square foot development is currently being developed as a 23-bedroom luxury retreat, which was refurbished in 2015 with a spa, restaurants, helipad, event space as well as a pub. Previously, No Man's Fort was marketed for $4.25 million, but now the asking price has dropped to $3.6 million, and the deadline of Friday, November the 26th, set for bids. The 3rd Spitbank Fort is also available for purchase under separate negotiation. All 3 forts are built with granite walls and armour plating and can only be reachable by helicopter or boat. Prime Minister Lord Palmerston commissioned the forts to repel the threat of a French invasion in 1859.
It's an Eton mess. Objections flood in for Seaview Homes Plan. More than 150 objections to Eton College's Greenfield housing plans in Seaview have been submitted. Comments to the Isle of Wight Council on the application closed last week, and objectors have been making their feelings known in droves. One said the proposed development would represent a totally improper use of a valued greenfield site, which is much loved by the local community. So far, no supportive comments have been registered. Agents Fowler Architecture and Planning, on behalf of the college, said the development represents a logical infill extension of the existing settlement. It wants to build 9 2 to 4 bed houses and bungalows on the site locally known as the Donkey Field. Island Roads has already lodged its objection to the development, saying it would increase traffic use through substandard junctions and along a substandard access road to the detriment of highway safety. One objector said developing the field would destroy the character of the area for all future generations by coalescing an urban area from Pier Road to Nettleston. They also said the donkey field provides a vital green lung for biodiversity, a sentiment shared by others who wish to see the scheme refused. Last year, a 150-year-old oak tree was felled on the site in preparation for a housing application, something MP Bob Seeley said he was appalled over. You can view the plans 21/01776/FUL on the Council's planning register.
Pondwell Group suspended. Pondwell Residents Association may now be in suspension after nearly 50 years, but members pledged to give it the kiss of life if developers threaten the area. The association was formed with the main aim of fighting inappropriate development and was one of many organisations opposing the loss of Ryde's last dairy farm on Pondwell's doorstep to the West Acre Park development of 473 homes. The PRA held its AGM after a 2-year COVID gap. Saturday's meeting was told with no one coming forward to serve as an officer, there was no alternative but to suspend the association. Chairman Barbara Spencer has also taken on the roles of Secretary and Treasurer to keep the association afloat. She was presented gifts in recognition of her 18 years service.
£30,000 penalties facing rogue landlords. Rogue landlords who knowingly rent out unsafe accommodation are set to be penalised by the Isle of Wight Council. Proposing a new civil penalty policy, the Council would have the authority to fine wrongdoing parties up to £30,000. With the island having a rented sector nearly 17,000 households strong, the authority said it is aiming to support good landlords, avoiding unnecessary regulation and red tape, but cracking down on those who knowingly rent out substandard accommodation. A civil penalty can be issued as an alternative to prosecution when offences are committed under the Housing Act 2004, but the same criminal standard of proof is required. The penalty could be used where there are failures to comply with improvement notices, offences in relation to licensing in houses of multiple occupation, and contravening an overcrowding notice. Reviewing 4 recent cases, the Isle of Wight Council's housing enforcement team has recently dealt with, including one landlord who had not fixed 9 hazards in a home lived in by a family with 3 children. Officers determined reasonable civil penalties would have been around £10,000. The money made from civil penalties, the council said, would create a sizable income for housing enforcement purposes, with the potential to afford more resources to regulate housing standards. The council would choose how to prosecute those involved, either enforcing a civil penalty or through the magistrates' court on a case-by-case basis. The council will look at multiple factors, including the severity of issues, the track record of the offender, and whether there is an ability for them to continue the business.
Water firm grants for island charities. 2 island charities will get a cash grant from a new community fund run by utility firm Southern Water. Hospice organisation Mountbatten's bereavement support work for young islanders with life-limiting conditions and their carers will benefit. Also being handed vital money is Sandown and Shanklin Independent Lifeboat. The community fund was set up in the spring 2021. and 5 charities applied for cash from a £250,000 pot among 65 organisations across Southern Waters region. A scheme for community grants for smaller charities, CICs, non-profit and volunteer-led organisation remains open, and applications can still be made for a share of a £100,000 pot. A further donation will be made later in the year for larger charities, said Southern Water. A £250,000 fund for customers struggling financially as a result of COVID also remains open. Earlier this year, Southern Water was fined £90 million for dumping sewage and causing environmental damage. It has been in the news again for legal storm water releases, which it says are but made up of over 95% rainwater running off the roads, mixed with some screened wastewater.
Remembering Island Fallen. The Isle of Wight has started to prepare for remembrance. A special field of remembrance will again be open to the public at Carisbrooke Castle to commemorate those in the services who lost their lives in service. A service which is open to the public will take place on Thursday at 10:45 a.m.
Island Roads teams prepare for winter. Island Roads has started preparations for its winter service. The autumn parade takes place every year at its Stag Lane depot and provides an opportunity for the company to test its fleet and brief drivers on the latest health and safety updates. This ensures they are familiar with gritting routes. The depot is home to 6 frontline griters, backup and specialist vehicles, as well as the island's road salt supply. Each year the island gets in 1,600 tonnes of graded rock salt. Last year there were 53 runs using 1,019 tonnes of salt across 6 key routes, around 350k in total. The gritters are fitted with pre-wet technology which sprays salt with a brine solution prior to spreading. Preparations for the winter months have also included the annual check of cat's eyes, ensuring those that are defective or missing are replaced. And that is the end of today, so it's goodbye from Paul.
And goodbye from Francis.
There is no scaffolding news this week. In Touch follows. It's all about the music. In Touch. In this music special, we'll be speaking to 3 visually impaired musicians about how they navigate their careers, what part of their visual impairment play in that, and to what extent they buy the common misconception that blindness and good musicianship are linked. You'll be hearing from Chris Campion, a heavy metal session guitarist in London. We talk about his career spanning across many different genres of music and about his solo tracks that were released over the lockdowns. Katrina Taylor, who is a soul and jazz singer and songwriter from London, she has just released her 5th album called Blind Passion that celebrates blind artists with her original compositions and arrangements. And Michael Stimpson, a classical composer who has released a piece of work called The Angry Garden. Upon its original release 20 years ago, the intention was to highlight climate change, and today, unfortunately, its themes are still current. It has been released to coincide with the COP26 summit currently happening in Glasgow.
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, we're talking about this.
Let go, let yourself be changed.
Hearing a bit of this.
Hearts are breaking all over the world tonight.
And discussing the themes which inspired this. You've guessed it, you genius. Tonight's programme is a music special, exploring the work of 3 visually impaired musicians from very different genres. They're not household names like Stevie Wonder, Andrea Bocelli, Jose Feliciano, but they are highly respected professionals in their own fields. Well, we're going to be asking how they navigate their careers, what part visual impairment plays in that, if any, and to what extent they buy the popular idea that somehow blindness and good musicianship are linked.
Hi, my name's Chris Campion and I'm a heavy metal guitarist from London.
Oh well, Chris, welcome to the programme. Where did your career in music begin?
I started playing at a very young age, like 11 or 12. I was already trying to prove I was better than my brother kind of thing. And then did a good 10 years of the solo guitar journeyman kind of journey. I've got retinitis pigmentosa, so it's been a very slow, gradual decline of my sight. So I could wing it in the early days and it slowly got less wingable. And then I started playing in bands because I wanted that experience and spent about a good 10 years moving from psychedelic rock into a more sort of lounge jazz, but always with a couple of indie bands on the side. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, I've mostly been doing heavy metal music and just trying to become a better musician now.
What about during the dreaded lockdown?
Well, nothing, zero. I mean, yes, but certainly by the end of the year, I realised I had another bunch of songs. So that's the next thing to get out, basically, is what I've been doing the last year.
Right. Well, we heard a little bit of your track Run at the beginning of the show. Is there a story behind that?
Yeah, so Run was a song that I wrote while I was writing a play for the Extant Theatre Company, directed by the great Maria Ascioli. And while putting that together, the tune that was hanging out, was around in the ether, sort of starting to form, was Run. So it became the opening track of the play. And yeah, it's basically there's a monster hiding outside, and if you're not careful, he's going to come in and get you, basically, and take that anywhere you want, basically.
It sounds so loud that it shakes the rain. Let go, let go, let yourself be changed. Let go, let yourself be changed. Do you dare ask for something more? Run, 'cause it's hiding in the dark, been counting up the days, comes crashing through the trees. Now nothing here is safe, but you can't stop him coming now.
Chris, because yours is a condition, you mentioned it, which results in sight deteriorating, I just wonder how much you had to make adaptations as you've gone along, really.
Yeah, I mean, I never really encountered any other blind musicians in all my years. So it's sort of like my own journey was kind of uninformed and I was sort of making my own way through it. I mean, I was always led around by my other bandmates, led on stage and all of that. It was more getting a bit exuberant on stage and realising you're 3 feet away from a microphone you have to get to very quickly and you can't see where it is.
Because am I right, you used to hide your condition on stage to some extent?
Yes. I mean, if something calamitous was to happen, I'd probably tell people. But
did anything calamitous ever happen?
There might have been a couple of times I fell off stage. Definitely knocked a pint of beer into quite an expensive amp in a venue I won't mention in London.
Well, in case they catch up with you.
Well, no one saw me. And so it's just things like that. And sort of stages can be very chaotic when there's 5 bands playing a night. And it's just a lot of relying on my friends and standing there. They know the protocol. They need to come and get me, put me in my place. I'll set up and then they take me away again, and that works great. And I use a hell of a lot of tech in the studio to actually be able to get anything done. But the thing is, there's actually quite a lot of tactile, accessible tech, which makes it so much easier to work.
And just one thing I forgot to ask you, but you always ought to ask a musician, influences on you, other rock guitarists maybe?
Number one is Robert Fripp, I'm afraid. He's definitely up there as my number one. Him and Hendrix, obviously, are the two that feel almost alien in their ability. And even though I've played guitar for 30 years, I still don't know where some of those places are on it, to be honest.
Chris Campion, stay with us, but for the moment, thank you. Now, to quote the legendary jazz double bassist Ray Brown, jazz is something you have to feel, something you have to live. Well, that was certainly the case for singer Katrina Taylor when she made the decision to quit her high-profile career in law to pursue the much chancier business of jazz and soul music. Well, I've been talking to her about that decision, but first, her latest album.
Hey, 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 I love the way that you love me.
Katrina, first of all, you've called your latest album Blind Passion in tribute to other blind artists. I'm interested to know why you've specifically featured your covers of songs from the likes of Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, Jose Feliciano, because I'd rather expected blind artists might not want to be pigeonholed, as it were, as a blind artist or a blind singer, just a singer.
I decided that it was time in my life to start talking about being a visually impaired singer, which I hadn't really always talked about or made too much of in the past. So I felt if I put some of those artists on there, and obviously the album is some of their songs and some of my songs, that it gave me a kind of way to talk about my sight a little bit more and about the eye condition that I have.
So who in particular influenced you when you were growing up, either as other blind artists or not, for that matter?
Oh goodness, I have such eclectic tastes. I was very influenced by the choices of my parents. We had playing in the house things like Billy Joel and ABBA and Aretha Franklin. And that was on my dad's side. And on my mum's side, she loved Brazilian music. So I had Astrid Gilberto and Tom Jobim. And so I had some really good influences there.
Your dad's a bit of a jazz fan, isn't he?
He does like a little bit of jazz, yeah. He was travelling around the world, so he would always kind of go into those, I guess, seedy jazz clubs in New York or wherever he was and watch the local acts.
And for those who don't know and haven't put it together, your dad, in his day, famous tennis player who I can remember beating Rod Laver at Wimbledon, I think.
That's right. He got to the semi-finals of Wimbledon 3 times. Roger Taylor, he was Britain's number 1.
Right. Now, if you were just to pick out one song from this album, what would it be?
Oh, that's hard. That's hard. I would pick one of my songs, Fly Me to the Stars. It's just a really positive vibe. It's a real feel-good song, and that's how it makes me feel.
Hearts are breaking all over the world tonight because you are with me. You're holding my hand and the lights are shining bright. You and me tonight. Fly me to the stars. We don't know nothing at all.
You became a singer, but actually that wasn't your first real profession, was it? You switched from law to music. Quite a gamble, really. What made you do it?
Sheer foolishness. No, I studied very hard to be a lawyer. I worked in the City of London as an intellectual property lawyer, but I just felt for me that something was missing. And for me, it was my soul calling to write music in particular and to perform and sing. And so I took that gamble. But I just think you only get one life and one chance. And I really felt compelled to follow my desire to sing and perform.
I mean, how tough is it to get established in music? I mean, people might feel that because there are so many major blind artists, iconic blind artists, that there wouldn't be, the resistance to it that people tend to meet in other fields. Is that right?
Music is super tough. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you are blind or not. And I think some of those artists were working in a different time. And in these times, it's still tough. It's still very competitive, quite a ruthless industry, really. But I'm in it for the reason of just loving it. That's the passion in the title of the album. And I think it speaks a little bit about me and how I feel passionate about what I do.
Katrina Taylor, thank you very much indeed. Now, if you listened to our programme last week, you'll remember that we were talking about climate change and the COP26 summit, which has just started in Glasgow. Well, someone who wanted to make his own very individual contribution to this debate is classical composer Michael Stimpson, with his vinyl release of a work called The Angry Garden. We're going to come on to the significance of that work in a moment, but just to get a sense of you first, rather like Katrina, you made a life-changing switch from science to music, I think, as a young graduate. What prompted that?
I think it may have been just getting drunk in a cafe in France, but I had just finished a very old-fashioned degree in botany and zoology, but by the time of the end of the degree, all the romance of my science had sort of left me. And by that time, I was convinced that music was the best way forward for me.
Now, before your sight loss, you were a performer, classical guitar, I think, rather than rock guitar. You played with some pretty big names as well.
I was spending all my 20s trying to be a performer, and I was getting there, but unfortunately I had a rather strong illness that curtailed that. All the name dropping would come post-illness, really. I started writing, editing articles and books, and I worked with people like Brian May of Queen and Alfonso Johnson, who was bass guitarist with Santana at the time, and Paco Peña, the flamenco guitarist, kindly did a chapter for the book, and even the wonderful classical guitarist John Williams wrote the foreword. So it then went on to a series of music with a lot of those people as well.
We must come to that illness because it had such an effect, a bolt from the blue, really. Just to explain what happened.
Well, it started on Christmas Day, actually, and gradually felt more and more poorly, got into hospital, and by New Year's Eve was totally paralysed and was in intensive care unconscious for about 4 months. And when I woke up, I couldn't see. And it took roughly about 10 years to fully recover from all the pain. But in the early stages, I thought I might be able to learn to play and did the advanced course of the Royal Academy of Music. But there was a tiny bit of tremor left in one finger, and so high-level performing wasn't going to be possible. And so I made the decision. I was composing a little bit, but decided to take it more seriously and went back to university and did my master's and then doctorate in composition. It's certainly laborious if you're, say, writing for the orchestra, because it goes through about sort of 15 levels of gradual refining and editing. You get used to it, but actually the writing of the music is the pleasurable part. I think it's everything else around it that perhaps wears you down rather more.
Right. Now, we must come to the reason that you're here, although it would have been fascinating enough anyway, because your latest release, The Angry Garden, you haven't written this for COP26. I think it was you composed it some time ago, but the themes behind it you feel are now particularly appropriate.
Yes, it's a longish 5-movement work for soloists and choir and orchestra. But when I was planning the work with the poet and author Simon Ray, it was obvious that you couldn't bang on about climate change for the whole piece. And so what we decided to do was take a very long-term approach. And so the first movement is in terms of creation of the earth and the universe. and we don't get to the actual climate issues until really the end of the fourth movement. And the second movement itself was something called Eden. It has a feel of a dripping rainforest in the middle section. I wanted to draw in a rather idealistic English countryside, almost Vaughan Williams kind of feel. And so the music has a rich brass recorded by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. You can imagine is just a fabulous sound.
Well, we can only play a small part of The Angry Garden, but Michael, can music change minds, do you think?
Well, I've always wanted to, or preferred to connect a piece of classical music with a contemporary issue, because I always felt that this helps move classical music into the more, should we say, realistic world. My first string quartet celebrated the end of apartheid. And of course, The Angry Garden was just to bring the issue 20 years ago to a different kind of audience. So I think it can. I'm quite realistic that it's not going to cause huge change, although I think with such formidable performers in this recording, it could help to bring new audiences to classical music.
Right. Brilliant. Chris Campion is still with us, and Michael and Chris, we've ranged about as widely as we could possibly do in terms of musical methods and genre, and I just wondered, how much do you two think you have in common, and what would you like to say to each other? Can I bring Chris back in, who's been listening?
Sure. Well, I think essentially just the driving force of trying to create something unique that is somehow an expression of you. The frustration levels can get pretty high. But it's also joyful when you have it all in your head and it's actually all in there. There's a magic to that as well.
And Michael, have you played any heavy rock?
Well, I did actually used to teach the electric guitar for Chris. I'm full of admiration because however skilled one became on the guitar, you'd try something basic on an electric guitar and you'd feel totally idiotic. So my heart is with Chris because the range of sound is so varied.
I'm really sorry we can't get you two jamming together. Michael Stimpson, Chris Campion, thank you both very much indeed. And that's it for today. From me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers Richard Hannaford and Jonathan Esp, goodbye.